Picture a cold December morning in 1917 in the harbor city of Halifax, Nova Scotia. The sun is just lifting over the Atlantic, glinting off a forest of masts and funnels in the water, and the city is waking up to what seems like an ordinary wartime day. Streetcars rattle along their tracks, children hurry to school, workers file into factories and onto the piers, housewives open curtains, letting in the pale winter light, and glance down toward the busy harbor that feeds the city's economy and supports the distant war in Europe. No one knows that in less than 2 hours, a single moment will tear the heart out of this city. Halifax in 1917 is not just any port. It is one of the key lifelines of the First World War, a staging ground where ships gather before they cross the submarine-haunted Atlantic in convoys. The wide Bedford Basin at the back of the harbor acts like a giant parking lot for warships and merchant vessels, all waiting their turn to head east. To get from the Atlantic into Bedford Basin, every ship must pass through a narrower, constricted channel called the Narrows. Imagine a busy two-lane road suddenly squeezing down to a single lane, with big, slow trucks trying to pass each other. Now replace the trucks with towering steel steamships, hundreds of feet long, heavy, and not very nimble. On this morning, traffic in the Narrows is heavy. Some ships are inbound from the ocean, others are outbound, heading for New York or Europe. Timetables are tight. The war does not wait. One of the inbound ships is the French cargo steamer SS Mont-Blanc. She is not a glamorous vessel, not a passenger liner with polished brass and grand staircases, but a workhorse of war, launched in 1899 and now pressed into dangerous duty. Hidden in her holds is a deadly cargo, thousands of tons of explosives and explosive ingredients, packed in barrels and drums. There is TNT, a powerful high explosive. There is picric acid, another energetic compound used in shells. There is gun cotton, a form of highly flammable cellulose, and there is benzol, a volatile fuel that can spread fire like liquid lightning if it spills. Taken together, Mont Blanc is essentially a floating bomb. At the other end of the harbor, in the Bedford Basin, another ship is preparing to move, the Norwegian relief ship SS Imo. She is outbound, headed first for New York, and then on to carry food and supplies for war-torn Belgium. She has spent days in port. Her crew is eager to get underway, to make up for lost time. 2 ships, one inbound, one outbound, both scheduled to pass through the same narrow waterway on the same busy morning. On shore, the danger is invisible. Wartime secrecy means that the nature of Mont-Blanc's cargo has not been announced loudly to the city or even widely in the harbor. There are no flashing warning lights on her hull, no loudspeaker telling people to keep their distance. To those who notice her at all, she is just another freighter in a harbor full of them. The rules that kept munitions ships anchored far from the city have been relaxed in the pressure of war. The risk is there, but it is hidden in paperwork and manifests, buried in a world where most people are busy simply getting through the day. And so, families go about their routines. Workers shoulder lunch pails, children tug on scarves and mittens. People open their windows to the harbor view, a view that will soon change forever. Shortly after 7:30 a.m., Mont Blanc begins her inbound journey through the Narrows. A harbor pilot stands on the bridge, guiding her carefully. He knows she carries a dangerous cargo. He has even asked for special precautions, but on this morning there is no escort, no guard ship clearing a safe lane in front of her. At roughly the same time, Imo receives permission to leave Bedford Basin and start her outbound run. Her captain, impatient after delays, pushes her faster than the posted harbor speed, trying to gain back time. The Imo cuts through the water, her engines driving her hard as she heads straight into the Narrows. The stage is set. 2 large vessels, closing on each other in a confined channel, each with its own orders, its own urgency, and its own assumptions about what the other will do. As the distance closes, the ships begin to communicate the way ships did in that era, with whistle blasts and maneuvering. Mont-Blanc's pilot sounds a single blast, indicating his intention to hold his course on the right side of the channel. Imo responds with 2 blasts, signaling something very different, an intention that conflicts with Mont-Blanc's plan. Each crew on each vessel interprets what they see and hear in real time. Each tries to adjust, but their decisions tangle rather than untangle the situation. Mont-Blanc steers more toward her right, hugging the Dartmouth side of the Narrows, trying to clear a path. Imo, still traveling fast, also shifts course and speed in ways that bring the ships closer instead of farther apart.
Imagine 2 cars on a narrow road, both trying to avoid each other, both swerving at the last second to the same side. Now imagine those cars are thousands of tons of steel and cargo, slow to turn, even slower to stop. Voices rise on both bridges, orders are shouted, engine telegraphs ring. Each second removes options, closes doors, and narrows the room for a safe escape. At about 8:45 a.m., in the tight confines of the Narrows, the inevitable happens. Imo's bow swings toward Mont-Blanc. With terrible, grinding force, she plows into the French ship's starboard side, tearing a jagged hole in her hull. Steel screeches against steel. Deck fittings snap. Men are thrown from their feet. Down in Mont-Blanc's holds and on her deck, the cargo shifts. Barrels of benzol topple, smash open, and spill their contents. The flammable liquid cascades across the deck and into the water, where it forms shimmering, spreading slicks that dance and ripple with the ship's motion. For a moment, it is just a collision. A bad one, but the sort that sometimes happens in busy ports. The ships grind together, then pull apart. Then the sparks come. Somewhere in the twisted metal and shifting debris, something ignites. The benzol catches. Fire races across the deck and down into the wounded ship. Within seconds, Mont-Blanc is ablaze. The crew of Mont-Blanc knows exactly what lies beneath their feet. They understand that the barrels and shells around them, heated by fire, can turn the ship into a weapon more powerful than anyone in Halifax has ever seen. There is no time to fight the blaze, no way to make the cargo safe. They abandon ship, taking to the lifeboats, frantically rowing for shore. In their desperate French and English, they shout warnings to anyone who will listen. Explosives! Get away! But confusion, language barriers, and the sheer chaos of the accident mean that most people do not understand or do not believe the scale of the danger. From a distance, what people see is a damaged ship on fire, drifting. Mont-Blanc, now a burning hulk, begins to move, carried slowly toward Halifax side of the harbor, toward piers and warehouses and neighborhoods just waking up. Flames climb her masts, smoke billows into the cold air, thick and black. On shore, in the neighborhoods near the water, the fire becomes a spectacle. People step out into the street, shading their eyes to get a better look at the harbor. Workers pause on the docks. Children press their faces to classroom windows. Office staff stand at third and fourth floor windows, pointing. At kitchen sinks and shop counters, the talk turns to the burning ship.
"Look at that. Must be quite a fire. Do you think they'll put it out?" exclaimed the voices from the piers. No one knows that the safe distance from a ship like this is measured in kilometers, not in blocks. No one knows that the cargo is not just flammable, but explosive, packed in quantities that can level buildings. They watch because that is what humans do when we see something unusual. We look closer. On the water, tugboats and small vessels move toward the burning Mont-Blanc, some with the instinct to help, others simply to see. Among them are firefighters and sailors who still believe they are responding to a shipboard fire, not to a floating bomb. Minutes pass. Flames roar higher, the heat builds. The clock is ticking, but no one can hear it. Just after 9:04 a.m., the fire reaches the heart of Mont-Blanc's cargo. In an instant, all the stored chemical energy in those explosives is released. The ship does not simply burn, it disintegrates. A blinding white-orange flash erupts at the center of the harbor. For a fraction of a second, it is brighter than the winter sun. Then a shockwave slams outward in all directions, faster than sound, faster than the human mind can react. Mont-Blanc is torn apart. Steel plates vaporize. The air itself is compressed into a wall of force, pushing outward with unimaginable pressure. The water under and around the ship is driven aside, forming a towering column and then a surging wave that races toward the shore. A man-made tsunami. Pieces of Mont-Blanc, some as big as engines, others as small as shards, are hurled into the sky. One massive anchor shank, weighing hundreds of kilograms, is flung more than 3 kilometers inland before crashing into the ground. Other fragments rain down across Halifax and Dartmouth. On land, the shockwave arrives like a giant, invisible fist. Near the harbor, entire rows of houses and warehouses are flattened instantly, their walls blown outward, roofs ripped away, timbers shoved sideways as if the buildings were made of paper. People closest to the blast have no time to scream. One moment they are alive, the next they are gone. Farther out, the windows that framed the harbor view just seconds earlier become deadly weapons. Thousands of panes of glass explode inward, spraying rooms, classrooms, and offices with high-speed shards. People who had gathered at windows to watch the burning ship are hit square in the face and upper body. Eyes are slashed, skin is torn. The injuries number in the thousands, a wave of trauma unlike anything local doctors have ever seen. Doors blow off their hinges, brick facades crumble. Streetcars are lifted from tracks, tossed like toys. Trees bend and snap. A blast of hot air followed by sudden silence leaves people stunned and disoriented, ears ringing, lungs burning. Across the harbor in Dartmouth, the story is the same. Buildings flattened, people killed and injured, the calm of morning replaced in a heartbeat by ruin. At the waterfront, the water pushed aside by the blast rushes back in as a surge. A wall of water crashes against the shoreline, sweeping away smaller buildings, tossing boats onto land, and adding drowning to the list of horrors. Ships in the harbor are damaged or destroyed. On some, sailors who had been watching Mont-Blanc's fire from the decks are simply gone, swept overboard or killed by flying debris. On land, fires break out everywhere. Stoves have overturned, lamps have shattered. Live wires lie across broken floors and streets. In the dry wooden structures of the early 20th century Halifax, flame finds fuel easily. Columns of smoke start to rise from the wreckage, joining into a grim crown over the shattered city. For a few seconds after the blast, there's a strange, almost eerie silence. Those who survive stand in shock, their minds trying to catch up with what their bodies have just felt. Then sound returns in a wave. The crackle of fire, the groaning of collapsing buildings, the cries of the injured, the shouts of those who can still move. People stumbled into streets now choked with bricks, shattered wood, and tangled wires. Many are bleeding. Many are calling names, children's, spouses, parents, neighbors. The familiar city layout is gone. Landmarks have vanished. Whole blocks near the harbor have been erased. Where there were houses, There are now piles of lumber and dust. Where there were shops, there are gaping holes. By the time the counting can even begin, nearly 2,000 people are dead or will die from their injuries. Thousands more are hurt, burned, crushed, lacerated, blinded. Entire families are missing. In some neighborhoods, almost every house has suffered death or injury. In the north end of Halifax especially, the devastation is nearly complete. Hospitals are overwhelmed instantly. Makeshift clinics spring up in schools, churches, and private homes. Doctors, nurses, and volunteers work without rest, facing injuries they have never seen on such a scale. One tragic pattern emerges again and again: damage to the eyes. So many people had been looking out through glass at the burning ship. When the shockwave hit, the windows became a storm of knives. Despite their own losses, survivors move quickly to help. Soldiers from the nearby garrison, sailors from damaged ships, and civilians all converge on the worst-hit areas. They pull survivors from collapsed houses, often using bare hands. They form human chains to pass debris and injured people. They improvise stretchers from doors and shutters. They carry the wounded through snow and broken streets to any building that can still serve as shelter. Firefighters, many of whom had lost comrades in the blast itself, work to contain the fires that threaten to consume what the explosion left standing. Their equipment is damaged, water lines are broken, yet they push on, focusing on saving what they can. In the midst of this, the weather turns. Within hours of the explosion, a winter storm rolls in over Halifax. Snow begins to fall, at first gently, then thick and steady, covering the ruins and the wounded alike. The storm complicates everything. Travel becomes harder. Rescue work slows as visibility drops and cold begins to bite. Those trapped in rubble now face not only injury and shock, but freezing temperatures. At the same time, the snow smothers some of the fires. It settles on smoldering ruins, dampening flames that might otherwise spread farther. It becomes a strange, double-edged presence, enemy and ally. Rescuers trudge through drifts, their breath fogging the air, carrying lanterns and stretchers into the night. News of the disaster travels quickly by telegraph and rail. Nearby communities in Nova Scotia send doctors, nurses, supplies, and workers as soon as they can. Trainloads of help arrive, bringing blankets, food, and medical equipment to a city in shock. From farther away, the response is just as swift. In Boston, hundreds of kilometers to the south, officials and citizens hear of the suffering in Halifax and organize a relief train loaded with doctors, nurses, and supplies. The train pushes through the winter weather, determined to reach the city as fast as possible. When it arrives, the help it brings is more than physical. It signals to Halifax that it is not alone, that other cities and other people share its grief and will stand beside it in recovery. This aid, especially from Boston, will be remembered for generations. Each year, Halifax will send a Christmas tree to Boston as a living symbol of gratitude and connection born from tragedy.
In the weeks and months that follow, the urgent focus slowly shifts from rescue to recovery, and from recovery to rebuilding. Teams survey the damage. Plans are drawn up to clear the wreckage and construct new homes for the thousands who have been left with nothing. Temporary shelters give way to more permanent housing. The destroyed neighborhoods near the harbor are not simply rebuilt exactly as they were. Instead, planners and engineers use the opportunity to design safer, more modern streets and buildings. New housing districts arise, with better standards and a more organized layout than the jumble of structures that existed before. The city's scars remain, both physical and emotional, but from them grows a new Halifax, one shaped by the memory of what happened and the determination that it should never happen again. In the wider world, the Halifax explosion becomes known as the largest accidental man-made explosion before the atomic age. The sheer scale of the blast, the destruction, and the loss of life astonishes people across continents. For engineers, planners, and military leaders, it becomes a case study in what can happen when dangerous cargo is brought too close to a city without enough safeguards. For doctors and medical researchers, it drives advances in emergency medicine, surgery, and especially the treatment of eye injuries and trauma. For the people of Halifax, though, it is more than statistics and studies. It is the day their city changed forever. Each year, on December 6th, the city pauses to remember. Bells ring. Ceremonies are held at memorials and cemeteries. Stories are told of those who died, those who survived, and those who rushed toward danger to help others. The harbor that once witnessed unimaginable destruction still bustles with ships and commerce, but beneath its surface and in the streets that slope down to its edge lives the memory of that winter morning in 1917 when a collision, a fire, and a blast shook Halifax and taught the world hard lessons about risk, responsibility, and resilience. And so, when the wind is cold and the harbor is still, some say they can almost hear echoes of that day, the distant whistle of ships, the crack of shattering glass, and beneath it all, the quiet, enduring promise that such a disaster must never be allowed to happen again.
In Part 1, the story focused on the human side of the Halifax explosion, the quiet December morning, the collision in the Narrows, the burning ship, and the blast that tore through the city. Now, the lens shifts. Instead of asking, "What happened?" this part asks a different question. Why did it happen? And what has changed so it is far less likely to happen again? This is not just a history lesson. It is a look at how everyday decisions, rules, and systems can either line up to create disaster or layer together to keep people safe. When people first hear about the Halifax explosion, it can sound like a freak accident. Two ships bump into each other, one happens to be full of explosives, and everything goes terribly wrong. It is tempting to call that bad luck. But when experts later studied the disaster, a pattern emerged. This was not just bad luck. It was a chain of small failures and risky choices that all happened to line up on the same morning. Think of it like slices of Swiss cheese. Each slice is a safety layer, harbor rules, communication, training, ship handling, emergency response. Every slice has holes, small weaknesses. A disaster happens when the holes in each slice line up, letting danger pass all the way through. On December 6, 1917, in Halifax, those holes lined up almost perfectly. First, consider the cargo on the SS Mont-Blanc. It was not just dangerous, it was designed to explode. The ship carried thousands of tons of explosives and explosive ingredients tightly packed together in one hull. In effect, the city had allowed a floating bomb into its front yard. Before the war, rules said that ships carrying such cargo should stay farther from populated areas. Wartime changed that. Because of attacks by enemy submarines, authorities were more willing to bring dangerous cargo into the protected harbor, closer to people, to keep it safer from enemy action. In other words, one risk, enemy attack, was traded for another,
bringing a huge quantity of explosives near homes, schools, and workplaces. This trade-off was not fully understood by most citizens. They simply saw another ship in the harbor. The biggest danger that morning was almost completely invisible to the people most at risk from it. Next, look at how the ships communicated. In 1917, there were no radios coordinating ship movements in real time the way there are today. Captains and pilots relied heavily on visual signals and whistle blasts. 1, 2, or 3 short sound signals were supposed to indicate what a ship intended to do: turn, slow, or reverse. On that morning, Mont-Blanc and Imo exchanged whistle signals in the Narrows. Each ship sent what its crew believed were clear messages about their intended maneuvers, but the intentions did not match. One thought the other would keep to one side, the other expected the opposite. It is a little like two drivers approaching each other on a narrow road with no traffic lights, both flashing headlights and waving hands, each certain they understand what the other means, until their cars collide in the middle. The communication system that day did not completely fail. It simply wasn't robust enough to handle confusion, human error, and the tight space in the Narrows. There were no backup systems, no central traffic controller, no radar screen showing the bigger picture that could step in when two sets of signals clashed. Another factor was the way the ships were being handled. The Narrows is, as the name suggests, narrow. It is a constrained waterway that funnels traffic between the open Atlantic and the wide Bedford Basin. Large ships need plenty of room to maneuver, and even more room to stop or reverse. On that morning, SS Imo was traveling faster than harbor guidelines recommended, trying to make up schedule delays. The ship was also light, carrying no cargo, so she rode high in the water and responded differently to her propeller than a fully loaded ship would. That made her harder to control precisely in close quarters. Meanwhile, Mont-Blanc, fully loaded and heavy, had less ability to dodge a last-second move by another vessel. When both ships made adjustments at about the same time, they quickly ran out of space and time. This combination, high speed for the conditions, limited space, and heavy traffic, meant there was almost no margin for error. A single misjudgment that might have been trivial in open water became critical in the Narrows. When engineers look at accidents, they often ask, how much room was there for people to be wrong and still be safe? In Halifax that day, the honest answer is almost none. Even after the collision, there was still a window of opportunity to save lives. The crew of Mont-Blanc fired for nearly 20 minutes before the ship exploded. In theory, that should have been enough time to clear people away from the waterfront and tell them to move back from windows and harbor viewpoints. But there was no system in place to quickly warn the public about the true scale of the danger. The crew of Mont-Blanc tried. They fled the burning ship and shouted warnings from their lifeboats and from the shore. Some people heard that the ship carried explosives, but in the confusion, language barriers, and disbelief drowned the message out. Most people assumed this meant something like ammunition or flammable goods, not a blast that could flatten entire districts. There were no sirens, no mass alert system, no coordinated emergency broadcast to say, get away from the harbor, move away from windows, take cover. Instead, human curiosity took over. People moved toward the harbor, not away from it. They clustered at windows for a better look, placing themselves directly in the path of flying glass. This was not because they were foolish. It was because nobody had told them that this was not a normal ship fire. They were making reasonable choices based on incomplete information. When the explosion finally occurred, Halifax's emergency response was courageous but unprepared. Doctors, nurses, firefighters, soldiers, and ordinary citizens threw themselves into rescue and medical work with little rest. They improvised clinics, cleared rubble, and fought fires. Their personal bravery is beyond question. But the overall system, the planning, the coordination, the supplies, had never been tested by anything on this scale before. There were no pre-written plans for a mass casualty incident of this size. No one had practiced what to do if a giant explosion destroyed part of the city. Hospitals were quickly overwhelmed. There were shortages of medical supplies. Transporting the injured was slow and difficult in the frozen, debris-filled streets. Communication between different responding groups was patchy, and rumors of a possible second explosion caused confusion and delays in some areas. In many ways, Halifax 1917 became one of the first modern tests of large-scale civilian disaster response. The city's heroic efforts also revealed just how important preparation and planning are before a disaster happens. In the months after the explosion, official inquiries and later studies tried to answer that uncomfortable question: who was to blame? Different reports over the years pointed fingers in different directions. Some blamed the captain and pilot of Mont-Blanc. Others argued that the crew of Imo shared responsibility. Still others looked beyond individual people and pointed to the rules, the harbor practices, and the wartime pressures that set the scene for disaster. For a non-engineer, the most important takeaway is not which single person or ship was at fault. It is the realization that several things had to go wrong at once. A heavily loaded munitions ship was allowed into a busy harbor near a city center. Communication between ships in a tight channel was incomplete and easily misunderstood. One ship was traveling too fast for the conditions. The public was unaware of the lethal risk and moved toward, not away from the danger. Emergency systems were not ready for an event of this magnitude. Change any one of those elements, and the outcome might have been less deadly. Put them all together, and Halifax became a tragic example of how complex systems can fail.
So, what did the world learn from Halifax? Over time, the explosion influenced laws, regulations, and professional habits in several ways. Many of these changes were not immediate, but the event became a powerful example used in safety discussions around the world. Here are some of the key lessons in plain language. Dangerous cargo needs special treatment. Ships that carry explosives, fuel, and other hazardous materials must follow stricter rules than ordinary cargo ships. They cannot be treated as just another vessel. Risk cannot be hidden. Keeping the nature of cargo secret for security reasons can create a bigger danger for nearby communities. Safety requires that the right people, port authorities, emergency services, and sometimes the public know what is at stake. Traffic in tight spaces needs strong control. Narrow waterways and busy ports need clear rules, professional pilots, and often centralized control to keep ships from conflicting with each other. Emergency planning matters. No city wants to imagine a major disaster, but planning and training in advance can save lives when the unthinkable happens. A natural question is, could something like Halifax happen again? No system is perfect and accidents still happen, but in modern, well-regulated ports, multiple layers of protection make a repeat of the Halifax scenario far less likely. Here is how those layers look today, explained without technical jargon. Clear labeling and documentation. Dangerous cargo is identified in shipping documents, and ships must follow international rules that say how such cargo is loaded, stored, and transported. This means port authorities and emergency planners know which ships carry what,
and they can adjust routes and procedures accordingly. Traffic control. Many busy harbors now have a central control center, a bit like an air traffic control tower that monitors ship movements using radar, satellite positioning, GPS, and radio communication. If two ships seem to be on a collision course in a narrow channel, the controller can intervene and issue instructions to separate them. Trained pilots and stricter navigation rules. Modern harbor pilots undergo extensive training and operate under clear, written rules. International collision avoidance regulations specify who must give way and how. While misjudgments can still occur, the guidance is far more detailed and consistent than it was in 1917. Fire and hazardous materials response. Firefighters, coast guards, and port emergency teams now receive training specifically tailored to shipboard fires and hazardous cargo. If a ship carrying explosives catches fire near a city, the default approach today is far more likely to be assume the worst, clear people away, rather than treat this as an ordinary fire. Public alert systems. Many cities now have systems, sirens, mass text alerts, broadcast interruptions, to warn people quickly if they must shelter in place or evacuate. This helps prevent the kind of situation Halifax saw, where people moved toward the danger because they did not know what was really happening. Each of these protections is like another slice of cheese in that earlier analogy. Even if one layer has a gap, the others can help block disaster. For people who don't work in engineering, shipping, or emergency management, it can be hard to judge risk. A harbor full of ships looks peaceful. A chemical plant on the edge of town may look like just another factory. A freight train rolling through a city at night may appear harmless. One of the lessons from Halifax is that the most serious risks are often quiet and invisible until something goes wrong. That is why specialists spend so much time on what-if thinking. What if this ship catches fire? What if these chemicals spill? What if power fails in the middle of a busy operation? To non-engineers, the resulting rules and restrictions can seem excessive. Why can't this ship dock closer? Why do we have to do this frustrating drill? Why are we not allowed in that zone? Halifax offers a compelling answer. Because the cost of ignoring rare but catastrophic events can be unimaginably high. The inconvenience of extra rules is tiny compared with the suffering caused by a disaster. Another key point for a general audience is the role of human error. It's easy to say, people make mistakes, and shrug. But in safety-critical systems, like ports, railways, and power plants, those mistakes must be expected, and the system should be designed to cope with them. That means assuming that someone will misread a signal at some point. Assuming that someone will be tempted to go a little too fast to make a schedule. Assuming that in an emergency, people will be confused and scared. Designers and regulators now try to build systems where one person's mistake does not automatically lead to disaster. This is done by limiting how much damage any single error can cause and by adding checks and balances, such as multiple approvals for dangerous actions, automatic alarms, and backup systems. Halifax, in hindsight, was a place with too few of those safeguards. Individual decisions had much more power to do harm than they should have. When experts say it won't happen again, they don't mean that no explosion or harbor accident will ever occur. What they mean is that the specific combination of conditions that produced the Halifax explosion is unlikely to be repeated in the same way, because so many of the underlying rules and practices have changed. Today, it would be much harder to bring a fully loaded munition ship into a busy city harbor without strict oversight. Allow such a ship to drift on fire toward populated areas without immediate, large-scale action. To have a major city completely unaware of the nature of the hazard on its doorstep. to have no coordinated emergency plan for a large explosion or industrial accident. That said, engineers and safety professionals are often cautious about declaring any disaster impossible. New technologies bring new risks. Old lessons can be forgotten over time if they are not taught and remembered. The real goal, inspired by Halifax, is not to say this can never happen, but to say we have many strong layers of protection and we are constantly checking them for gaps. For a non-engineer, what does all of this mean in everyday life? It suggests a few practical attitudes. Take warnings seriously. If authorities tell people to evacuate, avoid an area, or stay away from windows, there's usually a strong reason behind it, even if that reason is not visible. Respect boring safety measures. Fire drills, safety briefings, and restricted zones can feel tedious or overcautious, but they exist because somewhere, sometime, something went very wrong, and people vowed not to let it happen again. Ask questions about risks. In a workplace, at a community meeting, or near a major industrial site, it is reasonable to ask, what are the main risks here? What plans are in place if something goes wrong? Support good regulation. Safety rules can add cost and complexity to projects, but they also save lives, often in ways that are impossible to see because the bad thing never happens. Halifax is a reminder of what can happen when safety doesn't keep up with the level of risk. The Halifax explosion is over a century in the past, but its lessons are still current. Anytime a city debates where to place a fuel depot, how to route hazardous materials, or how to organize emergency plans, the same core issues arise. Visibility of risk, clarity of communication, realistic planning for worst cases, and the understanding that human beings will sometimes make mistakes. For Halifax itself, remembering 1917 is not only about honoring those who suffered and died. It's also about making sure that their experience continues to inform how people think about safety today. When people stand at the harbor now and look out over the calm water, they see ships, ferries, and distant waves. Invisible in that view are the many layers of rules, training, and systems that work quietly in the background to keep such a catastrophe from happening again. In that sense, the best tribute to the victims of the Halifax explosion is not only a monument or a ceremony. It is the ongoing work of learning from their story and using those lessons to prevent future disasters wherever people live, work, and gather near powerful forces and hidden risks.
For more videos like this one, showing major engineering disasters that have occurred, the lessons they have taught us, and changes that make them less likely to happen again, please consider subscribing to this channel.